Hello BookTube and welcome to Weekly Reads. I've had a productive, if mixed, reading week. So I finished off Tim Mackintosh-Smith's Arabs. This is a wonderful magisterial history of the Arabs and Arabic. And I particularly really enjoyed and found the final chapters incredibly thought-provoking and challenging. Pretty much the whole final part, re-emergence, 1800 to now, to be incredibly fascinating and challenging and wonderful reading. I particularly like several comments, or not comments, several sort of threads he introduces, or concepts he introduces in the final chapter. Demonocracy and anarchs to describe the political situation in the region. Particularly how a lot of these dictators use the threat of violence, the threat of anarchy and disorder to maintain their grip on power. It's just really fascinating. I highly recommend this book. It is amazing. So I read Arabs, or I finished up Arabs on Saturday and the first part of Sunday. So on Sunday, instead of starting ShakeTube or Space Opera September early, I went ahead and I decided to read some comics. I have a few collections on my Kindle. I have Kindle Unlimited. I don't really use it a whole lot. My preference is for physical copies, but I have added several books to Kindle Unlimited, and some of them have been comics. So before I touch on the comics, so neither one of them are Marvel or DC. The first one I read, The Eternal Warrior, Volume 1, written by Greg Pak and art by Trevor Hairsine. I think that's who did it, who did the art. Unlike Steve, I tend to gravitate more towards the writing than the art. But anyway. So, The Eternal Warrior is a superhero property from Valiant. Now, the comic book industry is dominated by two major publishers, Marvel and DC. They publish mainly superheroes, although they also do a few tie-in comics. Marvel has Star Wars. I think DC has a few. DC also used to publish a creator-owned line called Vertigo. Creator-owned comics are comics in which the creative team owns the rights rather than the publisher. But I think Vertigo has since become defunct, and some of those properties have since been folded into a DC, more of the superhero type properties from old Vertigo. I think that's how it worked out. But anyway, so Valiant is one of the third smaller publishers. They, I think, primarily publish their own superhero line, much in the vein of Marvel and DC, and the Eternal Warrior is one of their marquee heroes, created in the early 90s. He's a immortal Sumerian named Gilad Anapada, and he is the sword of, or the champion of the earth. I read the first volume of a more recent relaunch of the Valiant superhero line and of the Eternal Warrior, and well, I really liked Trevor Hairsine's art. It is really amazingly well done, and I do rather like a more realistic art style on the whole when it comes to American style comics. I thought the plot was a bit loose. I think the character motivations really weren't there. like why exactly Gilad is doing what he's doing. Why is he going after the gods? It wasn't explained very well, I don't think. But I did rather enjoy the story, regardless of my issue with why exactly he's doing any of the characters are really doing what they're doing. Although I guess you probably have to be an aficionado of God of War to actually understand it. But anyway, so the second comic I read was Locke and Key Volume 1, Welcome to Lovecraft, written by Joe Hill, and with the primary art duties, Gabriel Rodriguez. I liked the story. It was really interesting and compelling. Maybe a little too much influence from Daddy Stephen. And it kind of, I think, particularly towards the end, went on a little bit too long. But I didn't particularly care for the art. I think that's my main gripe with Locke and Key. I thought, it was a little too cartoony for my taste, but I also thought the sort of how most of the female characters are drawn relatively more realistically than most of the male characters, particularly the main male characters, who are drawn kind of blocky and rather gonky. So anyway, so then on Monday, since it was August 31st, and I didn't really want to jump on Space Opera September or ShakeTube, and after reading The Eternal Warrior and Locke and Key, I kind of decided I want to read some manga. I haven't read manga in ages, and I really wanted to play around and see what I can get on the Kindle. And so I did. I downloaded a bunch, or I guess borrowed, technically. Kindle Unlimited is basically Amazon library. So I borrowed a bunch of fairy tale volumes. Fairy tale is my favorite manga, and I'll talk about it in a little bit in a second. And then also went and found a volume of, I'm blanking on the Seven Deadly Sins and Attack on Titan. And so on Monday, I read the first volume of Fairy Tale by Hiro Mashima. And again, it is one of my favorite mangas, a shonen manga, where a bunch of... so basically in volume 1, Lucy Heartfilia is a young wizard. She's a celestial spirit mage who uses keys to summon the spirits of the constellations to fight for her. She's in a town, and she meets a young wizard named Natsu, who is revealed to be a fire dragon slayer, and they come together to fight this criminal wizard called Bora, who is actually impersonating Natsu. And in defeating Bora, they kind of destroy a part of a port city. And then Natsu's a member of Fairy Tale, which is a magical guild who basically go do various jobs for clients. And Natsu drags Lucy to join Fairy Tale, which she wanted to join from the beginning. And so eventually, in the next few chapters, sees the formation of Team Natsu, with Natsu, his cat companion Happy, and Lucy. And yeah, I really loved it. It's been several years since I've read Fairy Tale Volume 1. I used to have a copy, and I really, really want it back. I loved the story, even if there is a lot of early installment weirdness involved. But I love the art, even though I think Hiro Mishima's art improves as the story goes on. And I really want to start recollecting Fairy Tale. So after Fairy Tale Volume 1, I read The Seven Deadly Sins by Nakaba Suzuki. And I've tried, I think I tried the first volume a few years ago, and I don't think I quite got on with it at the time, but this reading I actually did, and I really rather enjoyed it. It's basically 10 years ago, the Seven Deadly Sins, who are an elite knight, order of knights, were framed for an attempted coup, and they disappeared. And 10 years later, the Holy Knights of Britannia have launched a coup to remove the King of Britannia from his throne, and his daughter is searching for the Seven Deadly Sins to sort of bring them together and try to get them to help her overthrow the Holy Knights and restore her father. So in her journey, she meets a young man named Melodius, who is revealed to be one of the Seven Deadly Sins, Wrath, and together they sort of start the process of getting the band back together. And I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting. Like the artwork. One major problem, though, is Melodius is a serial sexual harasser. I mean, yeah. And it is one thing that it's like, really? It's like, ugh. It is going to be very hard to root for him, I think. Because I do want to continue on with the series, at least for now. But, I mean, that is one thing to be aware of, is that, that sexual harassment is going to be an element in the story going forward. Although, whether or not it remains an element, or if it's eventually phased out as circumstances are sort of depending on how the, I guess, social opinion in Japan works out. I am completely flubbing that discussion, and I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, it is hard. I mean, that the sexual harassment is very, very hard to take, and will probably make me significantly less sympathetic towards him, but we shall see. I'll keep you posted. So from comics and manga, I started ShakeTube and Space Opera September on Tuesday with the first day of September. So on September 1st, I read Titus Andronicus. I'm not going to actually show you the play because I don't want to have to hunt it down. So I will have to tell you, my opinion of Titus Andronicus has significantly decreased from when I read it ages ago. It's a mess of a play. It's like, comes off as a rough draft that nobody ever got around to revising it or kind of like working on it again. Because, for one thing, the time frame of it happened so fast, even though there needs to be a greater sense of build-up. But it's like, okay, so Titus Andronicus is a Roman general who has led Rome's armies in defeating the Goths. This is basically, Titus Andronicus is anachronistic and a hodge, pretty much the entirety of the Roman Empire distilled in insane soup. But anyway, so Titus Andronicus has led Rome's armies in defeating the Goths and losing the vast majority of his sons in the process. So on his return to Rome, the Roman Emperor is dead, and the Emperor's two sons are fighting for the throne. And Titus is elected Emperor, and instead of becoming Emperor, he gives the throne to the oldest son of the past emperor, who basically screws him over and ends up marrying the Queen of the Gauls, who has her oldest son was sacrificed by Titus' son, so she wants revenge, and it basically becomes a game of revenge between the two of them until the incredibly bloody finale. But one thing on reading the play this time, besides the fact that it just is a mess, I noticed, why does Titus give the throne to Saturnine, the older son, when he should have a significantly stronger relationship with Bassianus, because Bassianus is betrothed to his daughter. And even in Shakespeare's own day, that Titus would have had to approve that betrothal, that there's that relationship there. So why it does not make a whole lot of sense why Titus goes with Saturnine and subsequently breaking the betrothal when, he should have already approved Lavinia's betrothal to Bassianus. It makes no sense. He should also know he can work with Bassianus, and he should know he probably cannot work with Saturnine. Makes no sense. And then the second point is, how involved is Saturnine in Tamara's revenge? When Tamara talks him down and urges him for peace, because basically after his marriage to Tamara, Bassianus and Lavinia are trying to reason with Titus. Saturnine comes and basically is going to throw everybody in prison. And then Tamara talks him down. But she tells him, in an aside, that, and let me alone, I'll find a day to massacre them all. So clearly he has to know what she's doing. So exactly how involved is he? Even as he sort of plays that he's not involved, it's a mess of a play. Although I really do enjoy Julie Taymor's 1999 adaptation. I think she kind of does a lot to really make the play work compared to, I think, the play itself. But anyway, so that was a bit of a disappointment. And then I read, starting on Wednesday, I read Consider Phelbas by Iain and Banks for Space Opera September. So I read the book about 10 years ago, and I think I bailed, or I never quite finished it. And coming back to it, I know why I bailed. I didn't particularly care for it. Didn't enjoy reading this at all. And I think my issue is that the book goes on it takes too long to get to the actual meat of the book. That Horza goes on this sort of tangential quest of being rescued by pirates, basically joining the gang, and then the sojourn on Vavach, before eventually getting to Scar's world. So basically, Consider Phelbas takes place during the early years of the Aediran culture war. Horza is a changer working for the Aedirans, and he is assigned to go to Scar's world and find a mind, one of the super computer artificial intelligences that rule the culture. Has sort of found itself on Scar's world, a planet of the dead, where all life has been eradicated from the planet. And so Horza accepts the mission, but before he can get started properly, he goes on this sort of tangential adventure where he's eventually picked up by pirates, joins the crew for several jobs, finds himself captive to a band of cultists or cannibalistic cultists on a doomed orbital. And then he eventually gets to Scar's world, where he and his entire crew basically get killed. Spoiler alert. I think it takes too long getting to Scar's world. That a good 100, probably, well, really almost 200 pages could have been cut from the book, I think. And then the characters, the dialogue, I just thought was indifferently done, very sort of plotting and mechanical almost. So, yeah. Very disappointing. Or very disappointed, I should say. So, what am I going to start on tomorrow? Well, tomorrow I will read A Midsummer Night's Dream for Shakespeare, and I will have a go at C.J. Cherryh's The Fated Sun Trilogy. Hopefully I will have better luck with The Fated Sun than I did with Consider Phelbas. And if not, hopefully I will have the sense to bail instead of carrying on. And if I do end up bailing, I'm not entirely sure what I'll pick up, whether I read some more manga or maybe pick up something else, more Shakespeare, maybe try to finish that off, or some more Space Opera September, and I'll let you know next weekly reads. But I'm kind of going on, so before I let you go, I did do some more room rearrangement. I moved this bookcase here and shifted the double-sided bookcase back to where it was, because I wanted more space for my science fiction. Basically how things were, I was out of room for science fiction. So now I have a bit more room for science fiction, because I do want to pick up some more science fiction. I haven't for several months, but I want to collect some more science fiction. I also wanted to make some space for more history books, which is what this bookcase will be doing once this bookcase here is finally filled up. And also, after having read Fairy Tale Volume 1 and The Seven Deadly Sins Volume 1, I want to start collecting manga again. So I basically cleared off the bookcase that my brother made. And so the top two shelves, these third shelves, I'm going to use for manga once I finally start picking some more up. And then try to sort of get like an entire series or two on each shelf, and then have the carryover come to my headboard bookcase, where the sort of the second shelf is really great for mass market paperbacks or tankobon editions. And then obviously I can use the top shelf too. So yeah, but that's all I have for this week, or for this video. So thank you, BookTube. I'll see you sometime next week. Hopefully I'll have more videos up next week, besides the two I had this week. But in the meantime, have a great weekend, and please stay safe. Thank you, BookTube.